I'm making this video for myself. Uh, I've been going through a serious situation, basically of a down spiral. I don't know what brought me into this down spiral. I have an idea, but it sounds so far-fetched that I don't really talk about it to people. I told my brother and sister about it, and they don't have anything to say because it is just that far-fetched. Um, when I was on the road, I saw these two guys on the side of the road. It was 11 degrees weather in Illinois. I want to say it was Troy, Illinois, because I remember the tower. There was this one female sitting next to them on the road, a dark road with raised edges where you could sit on the edge. And they were sitting in this road, on the side, with nobody else around. So I ride by in my 18-wheeler. Before I could get up close to him, I say I was probably within 30 to 50 yards from him. The female stood up and she was naked, but you couldn't see any features. You couldn't see nipples, you couldn't see hair, you couldn't see none of that on her. But she stood up and she put her arms out like Superman and flew up. And she ran into the water tower, which says Troy. She flew into the water tower and splattered. I'm like, okay. So I drove by, and the two guys that were on the side of the road looked at me and started smiling. So I just drove on by. And I was not on any drugs and no alcohol, of course, because if you drink alcohol on the road, you will get caught and you will lose your CDL. And that's my livelihood. So I kept on driving. I say about a month, 2 months later, I came home for break, needed a vacation. I get home and those same two guys show up at my door. But before they showed up at my door, the night before, there was a video playing in my hallway, on the wall, in the hallway. The thing about the video is, there was no projector. So I'm like, where's this coming from? There was no projector. The video was burnt orange with black figures. Burnt orange with black figures. And I could just see this face moving in it, talking just like I'm talking to you, but it was black as this shirt. So the next night, here come those two guys knocking on my door. So I'm like, okay, who's this? And I looked and it was those two guys. And me being surprised like that, I was like, okay. I just let them in. Without without a second thought, I just let them in. While they were sitting here, I'm just running my mouth, just talking. And all of a sudden it hit me. How do they know where I live? How do they know where I live? So once that thought sunk in, I instantly got up, went out the front door, left them in here, went out the front door, locked it. I locked the front door, went out the front door, and called an ambulance. I didn't want to tell the ambulance what I had seen because I didn't want them to send me straight to the institution, to the hospital. To the psychiatric ward or whatever. So I told them I couldn't breathe. I can't breathe. So they took me to the hospital. They kept me in the hospital 10 hours. During this time of being in the hospital, COVID was in full flame. So there was no visitation. Guess who comes walking down the hallway? The two guys that came to my door, walking down the hallway. It's like the nurses didn't see them whatsoever. The nurses didn't see them. So that was the last time I saw them. No, it wasn't. So I went home. After about 10 hours, I went home. I was so scared to go home that I slept on the sofa and closed the door to my front room. I slept on the sofa. So I got hungry one of the nights after that, and I went to the kitchen, and I don't have curtains up on my window. I didn't at that time. So I'm washing dishes in the kitchen, trying to clean up my kitchen so I can cook me something to eat. And in my back window, here's one of the guys, that one that wears the brown leather jacket that stops off at the waist. He walks in the backyard and looks through my kitchen window at a distance. He was probably 10 yards away from me. Looks in my kitchen window, and his eyes glow like the headlights of a car. And I'm just looking at it. And I dropped everything, came back in the front room and sat down. There's nowhere I could go. I didn't have nowhere to go. So I came back in here and sat down. And I think that was the last time I saw him. After that, a little while later, much later, I began to see this other little being. But he wasn't human like these other two. These other two looked like black men. But this other thing I've been seeing, I don't know what it is. But it's as black as this shirt, and his eyes are real big and white. But he always appears like around the corner. Scares me to death. And I have to scream out, which I do. And that's happened twice, where he's been around the corner. And I come around the corner, and there he is, and it scares me so bad. And he's got these big eyes, and I never could notice the body, but something's telling me the body's about this big, because I never have been able to see a body. Because he's always in the dark, with a little light way back there somewhere, but it's mostly he's in the dark. So, the last event I remember was one of my friends came over, but he was unusually big. That's not his size. And the only thing I can put together was that just the same, it was the two guys, but one of them had shifted form and took the form of my best friend, one of my good friends. But he was too big. His face was too big, his body was too big, but it was the same person, but just in a big form. So he had body shifted, or whatever you want to call it, human shifted. And then the next day, I saw my friend at the store, convenience store down the street, and he was the same person again. He was the actual person. So I'm thinking the aliens, I want to say the aliens had taken his form. And it's had me so mentally torn that I haven't been able to get myself together to think straight, to go back to work, or nothing. And now I'm in a predicament. And I'm trying to get back to work. But I'm in a predicament. So all I'm trying to do now is just sort everything out. I've only got a couple of more days before I can tell whether or not I'm going to be able to go back to work. But I'm asking God for help. It's the only thing I can do. I cannot handle this by myself. And I've been asking God for help. And he's been giving me smiles. And I hope these smiles mean that I'm going back to work. I'm getting out of this house. I'm getting out of this rut and get back to work. This is a little bit too much. I just want to put that on tape, just in case anything happens to me.